Thank you. That concludes topical questions. The next item of business is a statement by Angus Robertson on Scottish Government response to the outcome of the EU-UK summit on the 19th of May. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of his statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Angus Robertson, Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Yesterday's agreement between the United Kingdom Government and the European Union is a matter of significant consequence for Scotland. The agreement will bring limited benefits to the wider economy while falling painfully short of the benefits that Scotland would experience as a member of the European Union. At a time of global insecurity, the importance of European nations working together cannot be overstated. The President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, captured this well yesterday, stating that, and I quote, "We are friends and we are Europeans. We are very like-minded. We share the same interests and the same values." Those are the values of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law and respect for human rights. And the Scottish Government and the people of Scotland have long held this view. Yesterday's agreement was an acknowledgement by the UK Government that we continue to live through the negative impacts of the previous government's catastrophic error of inflicting a hard Brexit on the people of Scotland, and sadly many of those devastating impacts will remain. The UK Government's own release on the agreement stated that it, and I quote, "meets the red lines set out in the Government's manifesto: no return to the single market, no return to the customs union and no return to freedom of movement." The Labour Government is trumpeting that it will hold fast to the Conservatives' hard Brexit, no matter the economic, social and security benefits we lost by being dragged out of the EU. If it is serious about economic growth, the Labour UK Government needs to drop its red lines around rejoining the single market, the customs union and freedom of movement. I must here say a word for the defence and security partnership that was agreed yesterday. With war having returned to this continent, it is critical that in Scotland we can contribute to a strong united Europe and help put an end to Putin's illegal full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And it's clear that our common security will be strengthened by acting together. As the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, pointed out, together Europe has great potential to deliver. More generally, many parts of yesterday's agreement match the priorities that the Scottish Government has set out very clearly and where we have called for progress for many years. This is, of course, to be welcomed. For example, the progress on commitments to deepen aspects of justice and security cooperation with the EU are overdue. And as with our shared security, our mutual prosperity can most effectively be enhanced by acting together. I've called many times for an agriculture, food and drink or SPS agreement in order to reduce the checks and delays on goods moving between Scotland and the EU. This will reduce frictions and delays for accessing important EU markets for our Scottish food exporters, while also reopening the export of our seed potatoes. I'd like to see rapid progress on confirming the scope and the implementation of this agreement. On energy, the linking of UK and EU emissions trading schemes is an important step forward, as are the wider initiatives enhancing climate cooperation and commitments to explore rejoining the EU's internal electricity market, which has the opportunity of reducing energy bills for consumers here. Scotland has a huge offer to make to our neighbours on our resources and expertise to help build the clean, renewable energy of the future. In that regard, I particularly welcome the reference to closer cooperation on new technologies and the possibility this could create for Scotland to contribute to Europe's hydrogen backbone. Once again, we see that the most effective way for us to ensure security and prosperity for us all is to work together, and it's only through cooperation that we can confront the scale of the climate challenge. On trade and services in the agreement, I welcome the commitment to further dialogue on the mutual recognition of professional qualifications and on short-term entry and temporary stay arrangements for business. One of the gravest consequences of Brexit has been the loss of people's mobility to move across Europe, and that includes both for business and for study and travel. Therefore, I am glad to see that the agreement contains a commitment to work towards a scheme to better enable young people in the UK to work, study and travel in the EU and vice versa. But this pales in comparison with the benefits of freedom of movement. We have for many years urged the UK Government to reassociate to the Erasmus Plus programme to allow Scottish students the opportunity to study abroad and to allow Scotland to welcome the EU's students. The announcement that the UK and EU will work on the UK rejoining the exchange programme, subject to an agreement on financial terms, is a welcome one. Sadly, a similar commitment to rejoin Creative Europe has not been agreed. So, it is clear that the UK Government has finally sought progress in many of the areas where we in Scotland have called for action and where, frankly, it's been self-evidently in the interests of us all to cooperate with our neighbours across Europe. However, let me bring a note of realism and then propose a better way ahead. The fact that this agreement, not least on fisheries, was reached without the explicit engagement of the devolved governments on the negotiating detail is not just an affront to devolution, it has put at risk and will continue to put at risk the benefits of any commitments for the people of Scotland. While it's true to say that the UK Government did give readouts of some areas of progress, they reached an agreement on fisheries without any recourse, any involvement or any approval of devolved governments. In fact, all three interministerial meetings between the UK Government and devolved governments covering environment, rural affairs and agriculture, where fisheries should have been discussed, were all cancelled by the UK Government. The meeting scheduled for the 10th of March was cancelled by the UK Government. The meeting scheduled for the 31st of March was cancelled by the UK Government. The meeting scheduled for the 12th of May was cancelled by the UK Government. A call scheduled this last weekend while negotiations were underway between the UK and EU involving the UK Minister Daniel Teichner and Scottish Government Minister Jim Fairley was cancelled by the UK Government. An additional call scheduled this last weekend involving the senior Scottish Government civil servant on European affairs in the UK Government Cabinet Office was cancelled by the UK Government. In the one face-to-face meeting which did take place in the immediate run-up to the summit involving me, on behalf of the Scottish Government, alongside the Welsh Government and Northern Irish Executive, the fisheries issue was not even raised by the UK Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds, and certainly no prospects of a 12-year lock-in deal. I had to raise the issue, I had to ask for documentation, I had to ask for draft proposals, the sort of information shared between the European Commission and EU Member States, and said the UK Government still had a number of days to do this. They did not do this. The shortcomings of this approach have been echoed by other devolved ministers in Wales and Northern Ireland. Last year, we were promised a reset of relations by the incoming UK Government, a reset with the European Union and a reset with Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But excluding devolved governments from meaningful consultation, repeatedly cancelling communications, and sharing important details only after agreement has been reached in devolved areas is not a reset. It's not good enough. Presiding Officer, this Government stands ready to engage constructively as more detail is added to yesterday's agreement. The Scottish Government must be more closely involved as the UK Government develops its future priorities for working with the EU. The truth is that the commitments yesterday can only stem some of the harms of Brexit. So while the Prime Minister proclaims that he has respected his own self-imposed damaging red lines, not rejoining the customs union, the free market, or introducing freedom of movement, we say that this is preventing us from taking exactly the measures that we need to create greatest benefit in our relationship with the rest of Europe. And while we stand ready to engage constructively, I say again that no agreement delivering the security and economic and social benefits we lost with Brexit. Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. And may I remind members that today's statement is follow-on business, and I expect those who wish to participate in any item of business to be in the chamber for the beginning of that item of business. The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business. And I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons. And I call on Tim Eagle.
Well, thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of the statement? That is very helpful. Now, there is much to discuss in this statement, but I do want to focus on fishing. Now, the deal negotiated by the Prime Minister with the EU was the worst deal possible for Scotland's fishermen, short of going back into the common fisheries policy. Sir Keir Starmer caved into French demands, and he has given EU vessels near unfettered access to UK waters for up to 12 years. You can look at me, Labour, why I'm telling you this. You've done this to them. In what was described as a horror show.
Always through the chair, please.
Sorry, Presiding Officer. In what was described as a horror show for Scottish fishermen by Elspeth MacDonald and the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. But it does concern me that today's statement lacks any focus on the substance of the deal and its impact on our fishing communities. Now, the cynic in me wonders whether if this is because the SNP would force Scotland back into the common fisheries policy, going even further to surrender our hard-fought fishing rights. Now, whilst I'd like to focus on the odd policy position of the SNP, what really matters here is the livelihoods of our fishing fleet and the communities that are connected with them. So can I ask two important questions? What will the SNP government now do to support these vital fishing communities? And what would Labour SNP have done differently to Labour?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I thank Tim Eagle's contribution, and I think he's right to point with a critical perspective on the fisheries agreement that was reached, which was a continuation of the deal that was negotiated by the Conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson.
Let's hear one another. There are many members who wish to put questions.
I know it's very difficult for the Conservative front bench to hear this, but it is a fact. It's a fact that what the Labour Party has done has agreed to a 12-year rollover of the deal agreed by the Conservatives. So I'll take no lessons from the Conservatives or the Labour Party on the fishing deal. But he did ask. He had a point of, I think, an important question. It's one that I share. Where's the detail of the deal? Where is it? We asked for it. We asked for what might be negotiated. We didn't receive that. We have asked for what has been negotiated, and short of a line literally acknowledging the shortcomings of the deal, that there should be hundreds of millions of pounds paid to fishing communities, you have to conclude, because the deal is bad, but we have no details of how that is going to be allocated or where it is going to be allocated. So Tim Eagle asks, what are we going to do about that? Well, that's one of the first things that I'm going to be asking the UK Government Minister with whom I have been discussing this agreement when I speak to Nick Thomas-Symonds later this afternoon, and I'll be happy to report back to Mr Eagle so we can be aware of the conclusions from that.
Neil Bibby.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of his statement. The SNP's response to the UK-EU deal is miserable, opportunistic, inconsistent and is out of step with the interests of the Scottish people. The Cabinet Secretary, who supports membership of the Common Fisheries Policy, has displayed full outrage online when it comes to fishing, but he's also displaying that he's out of touch with the vast majority of Scottish businesses and consumers. Supermarkets have said it has the potential to significantly reduce the cost of the weekly shop. Salmon Scotland, which represent our biggest food export, have welcomed the deal. So too have the CBI, the FSB, the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, BAC Systems, Ryanair, UK Hospitality, the Food and Drink Federation and many, many more. The new UK Labour Government is getting on with the job of rebuilding our economy. Meanwhile, the SNP are all over the place and seem to be opposing this deal alongside Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch. Given the overwhelming support from industry, Scottish industry, for this deal, does the Cabinet Secretary not accept that opposing this deal is a major miscalculation?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I say, as with most deals, there are things that are worth welcoming, and I would hope that everybody agrees that an agriculture food deal, an SPS deal, is a good thing. It's something that we have called for the longest of times, and I outlined in my statement the further areas that we welcomed. But Mr Bibby, curiously, has come to the chamber here today and won't even echo the criticism of his Labour First Minister colleague from Wales. Eleanor Morgan has shared the same criticism as the Scottish Government has done, as have Northern Irish ministers, of the way in which the UK Labour government has dealt with the fisheries issue. Why Neil Bibby finds it so difficult to come here and acknowledge that is beyond me. Do I support a deal on SPS arrangements? Absolutely. Do I support being part of Erasmus+? Yes, I do. Am I sorry that the UK government didn't allow Scotland, the rest of the UK, to rejoin Creative Europe? Yes, I think that is a shortcoming. But I think Neil Bibby has to reflect on the fact, why is it that the Labour Party in Wales is prepared to be critical of the fisheries arrangements in this deal, but the Scottish Labour Party, in the country that has the biggest single concentration of fishing interests anywhere in the UK, can't bring himself to do it?
I call Emma Roddick to be followed by Jamie Halcrow-Johnston.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Fishermen's Federation has described this deal as a horror show, far worse than Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal and total indifference of the British political establishment to the interests of our fishing sector. Labour's latest betrayal will be raw for many in our fishing and coastal communities, and it sends them a message that they do not matter. What's the SNP's message for them?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I say, it beggars belief that this agreement has been reached by selling out Scotland's fishing communities. Labour promised fishing communities in Scotland that their interests would be protected in this process, but after years of Westminster broken promises, fishing communities in Scotland could potentially now find themselves in the worst of all worlds. Fisheries was famously, infamously described as expendable by Westminster when the UK joined Europe. I think that was a Conservative government at the time, and it is clear that that attitude has not changed in the half-century since. So, given the importance of fishing to Scotland, it is ridiculous and deeply disrespectful that the Scottish Government was not even consulted, and we urge the UK Government to urgently clarify how the new Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund will be administered and apportioned.
Jamie Halcrow-Johnston to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you, and can I apologise to yourself and to the Chamber, Presiding Officer, for missing the start of this statement. Only last month, the SNP's Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs confirmed in this Chamber, and I quote, "The Common Fisheries Policy is an integral part of EU law. It is well established that membership of the CFP is a fundamental requirement of EU membership. The Scottish Government supports the overarching principles and strategic outcomes of the CFP." We can all agree that Labour's deal is a sellout of our fishing communities. But will Angus Robertson also accept that while Labour may have given away the chance for annual negotiations for 12 years, in their obsession with rejoining the EU and so rejoining the CFP, the SNP want to give that away permanently?
Cabinet Secretary.
So no, I don't expect that characterisation.
Let's hear one another.
How does it work, Jamie Halcrow-Johnston asks. Well, under this agreement, agreed, but I'm not sure if Mr Halcrow-Johnston wants to hear the answer.
Do continue, Cabinet Secretary. Let's hear one another.
Under this arrangement, this is a statement about the agreement reached by the UK Labour Government on our behalf, on Scotland's behalf. They have signed up to a 12-year tie-in, a straitjacket deal on fisheries. Over the next 12 years,
Cabinet Secretary, this is not acceptable. Members have an opportunity to put a question. Minister responding has an opportunity to respond. What we don't have is an ongoing conversation backwards and forwards. Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Halcrow-Johnston should perhaps turn up at the start of debates and statements, and then he would have heard what people actually said. But I'm surprised that he doesn't know that Member States of the European Union are part of an annual negotiating process. This 12-year straitjacket deal is not that. That is why I've said it is the worst of all worlds. And the fact that the UK Government couldn't even share the detail of what they were prepared to negotiate and negotiate away with the Scottish Government is something that we deeply regret. But sadly, nobody on the Conservative benches has even thought important enough to mention.
Rona Mackay to be followed by Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. While any progress in repairing the damage of the intergenerational catastrophe that is Brexit has to be welcomed, the fact is that when it comes to renewing relationships with the European Union, small steps just won't cut it. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what the Scottish Government's view is on how much progress can actually be made regarding safeguarding Scotland's interests, whilst the UK Government maintains red lines on the single market, customs union and freedom of movement?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, no agreement can deliver the economic, social and security benefits that we lost with Brexit in 2020. And if it's serious about economic growth, the UK Government needs to drop its red lines around the single market, customs union and freedom of movement. These are both now pro-Brexit parties. We believe that the best answer is for Scotland to be an independent member state of the European Union. These parties only seek to ameliorate the damage of Brexit. Any less damage is a good thing. Why don't we go for the real deal and actually be a part of the single market, part of the customs union and part of the European Union? The Labour Party used to believe in that.
Faisal Chowdhury, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SPS agreement announced in yesterday's summit cuts red tape, saves businesses thousands in fees, and has been welcomed across the food and drink sector. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise what impact an SPS agreement will have on Scotland's food and drink exports and how it will support the Scottish Food and Drink Partnership's ambition for food and drink to be a £20 billion sector?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think that's a very sensible question from Faisal Chowdhury, because I try and say an agriculture, food and drink deal rather than an SPS deal, because I don't think anybody in the real world knows what that is. So this is a deal on what we produce on our farms, what our fishermen and fisherwomen land, and what we export in terms of food. In this country, we produce a lot of food and drink, and we export a lot of it, and a lot of it goes to the European Union. So having an SPS agreement, which the Scottish Government called for, which I impressed on the UK Government and they should agree to, is something which I and the Government welcomes. Mr Chowdhury may or may not be aware that the UK Government has yet to introduce the border checks that it will have to under Brexit agreements. And one of the advantages is an SPS agreement will obviate, I think, around 90% of the necessity for any kind of border checks. I think that's a good thing. Incidentally, that would also be the case between an independent Scotland in the European Union and the rest of the United Kingdom outside it.
Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Patrick Harvey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if he can set out what the main and most damaging points of Brexit have been to Scotland, particularly with regard to the fish processing sector in the North East, and how, if at all, will the agreement reached ameliorate these harms? And does the Cabinet Secretary also agree with me that in the extremely uncertain economic and geopolitical environment that we currently live in, it's absolutely vital that Scotland has the security, stability and opportunity that comes with membership of the European Union through independence?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I think the fish processing sector has suffered for two particular reasons since Brexit. Firstly, about getting product to market, and often and significantly within the European Union. And they've suffered for a second reason, which is the end of free movement. So where previously there were a large number of EU citizens prepared to work in fish processing, many of whom have now left, and it's difficult to fill the jobs in many fish processing sites. So the first part of the question relating to access to market, this is going to be obviated and improved by an SPS agreement. Being able to get product from Scotland to the European Union will be significantly improved. That is a good thing. Will it deal with free movement and the restrictions of people being able to work here? No, it will not. And in fact, we know, because of the Enoch Powell-type rhetoric that we heard from Keir Starmer the other week, the UK Government has absolutely no interest in making sure that Scotland has the migration policy that we require for Scotland. So it's a mixture of two things to answer Audrey Nicholl's question. I think there is an upside in terms of getting fish and shellfish to market. There's a downside. It doesn't deal with free movement. And perhaps if the UK Government had dealt with the Scottish Government properly in the run-up to the agreement, we'd been able to obviate all of this.
Patrick Harvey, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
the anti-European posturing from some members is not only out of step with Scottish public opinion, it's out of step with public opinion throughout the rest of the UK as well. And the public do want to see progress on youth mobility, something that should have been among the first issues to be signed off between the UK Government and the EU, but it hasn't been. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that it is sickening, frankly, to see politicians who exercised the right of freedom of movement when they were young depriving today's younger generation of that same right and freedom? And will he reinforce to the UK Government that if they're going to make progress on this in the future, an issue that impacts on devolved matters like further and higher education, they must start talking to us?
Cabinet Secretary.
I agree entirely with Patrick Harvey about the damaging impact that Brexit has had in terms of people's life experience and ability to travel, work, live, love elsewhere in Europe, and for our neighbours from the rest of Europe to come here. It's been really damaging, and that damage has been felt particularly in our university sector since Brexit. So he's absolutely right to highlight that. What we have is, and this is one of the difficulties that we have with this agreement, is that there's literally no detail. So we have a commitment to a youth experience scheme that is supposed to afford the ability for young people to come and go. We don't know how many, when it'll start. We don't know any of the rules around it. None of that's been shared with us. So, do I welcome the fact that there is a scheme that may come that might be good? Yes, if it is that. But sadly, we have none of that detail, because unfortunately the UK Government has not shared any of that information with us, or indeed to the Labour front bench.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I offer my apologies for my slight late arrival. Presiding Officer, this is a welcome first step, and Liberal Democrats welcome it, but we hope it's only a first step and that we see closer integration still further. I was very surprised to hear the Cabinet Secretary make claim that his government has lobbied the UK Government for a replacement to Erasmus Plus, or to reassociate with Erasmus Plus. Within 18 months of Brexit, an Education Secretary, a Liberal Democrat Education Secretary in Wales, had a replacement scheme up and running. We have tried ever since, day in, day out, to get the Scottish Government to do likewise, and yet still we see them about dangerously close to being lapped by the UK Government in the pages of this agreement. Will he now take the opportunity to apologise to 5 years of young Scots who have missed out on these vital exchange opportunities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I say from the outset, I've been of the view, and I've had this interchange with Alec Cole-Hamilton before, that there is no effective substitute for Erasmus Plus scheme than Erasmus Plus. While the Tithe scheme in Wales had much to commend it, I'm sure that even he must, in the cold light of day, looking at the scope and the scale of that scheme compared to Erasmus Plus, realise that Erasmus Plus is where it is at. So hopefully he will support the Scottish Government in making the case to the UK Government that that scheme should be as ambitious and as widely accessible for as many students as possible. Again, that's another area where I can't give him any information if he were to ask me about that, because sadly the UK Government has not shared that with the Scottish Government, or indeed the Scottish Labour Party either.
Claire Adamson, to be followed by Finlay Carson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, I welcome closer integration with our EU neighbours. It's the world's biggest economic bloc, and it is critical to our economic and cultural prosperity. Brexit has been an unmitigated disaster, not least of which to our culture sector and for touring artists. So it's very disappointing to see that this hasn't formed part of the negotiations. Labour promised change and also a reset of the relationship with the Scottish Government. Does the Cabinet Secretary see any discernible difference between the attitude of this Labour Government and the previous Tory incumbents?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, on this question, sadly no. when it comes to the culture sector, when it comes to touring artists, when it comes to rejoining with Creative Europe. It took the Scottish Government to raise that with the UK Government, to ask where they were with it. I asked for any documentation, I asked for any negotiating positions on this. That was still a number of days before the discussions took place in the run-up to yesterday's summit, and we received absolutely nothing back from the UK Government, zero back. I would have thought that a government, that a party that said that it was in favour of supporting the culture sector, supporting tourist artists, and at least rhetorically understood that Creative Europe is a good thing to be part of. It's a shame that we have a missed opportunity, that this agreement does not deliver on any of those things.
Finlay Carson, to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
Presiding Officer, there is no doubt about the significant negative impact of the deal on the Scottish pelagic and demersal fishing industry as a result of the complete capitulation of the Labour Government. That said, many inshore fishermen and farmers in my constituency of Galley and West Dumfries will welcome changes to the sanitary and phytosanitary checks, allowing more friction-free access to European markets for our time-sensitive exports, including scallops, langoustines, lobsters, salmon and Scotch beef. The biggest threat, however, to the inshore and agriculture sectors is a total lack of progress and abysmal failure of this SNP government to deliver sustainable and profitable inshore fisheries management, or indeed 9 years on they are yet to deliver a fit-for-purpose replacement for the CAP for our farmers. When will this government stop pointing the finger at failures elsewhere and pull out the finger and step up to their responsibilities to deliver a just transition for fishing, farming and our food sectors?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, Presiding Officer, I'm sure you wish me to concentrate my remarks to the subject of today's statement. And on that, I agree with Finlay Carson that an SPS agreement, so an agro-food deal, is a good thing for farming communities such as that which he represents. I agree that it is so. And I agree with him about the shortcomings about the UK Government's position in relation to the 12-year straitjacket that they've agreed to. One element he didn't ask about, but he might have done given his constituency interest, is the impact that this has in relation to trade with Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland being a part of the European single market, and a deal like this is, we very much hope, is going to be of benefit to trade between Northern Ireland and Scotland, by extension the rest of Great Britain, and that is a position that the Scottish Government holds.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scottish vessels are around 61% of the UK fishing fleet, and yet there has been a renegotiation on fisheries without any discussion or engagement with the Scottish Government. So what possible justification could there be for this, other than to make a political point by sidelining the Scottish Government to the detriment of Scotland's fishing interests and coastal communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I genuinely don't know what the negotiating strategy of the UK Government was. I think that there was a general expectation that there would likely be a multi-year outcome when it comes to fishing. I don't think any serious commentator anywhere thought that there would be a 12-year agreement by the UK Government. Where that came from, I know not. They never raised it in any meetings with the Scottish Government or colleagues from Wales or Northern Ireland either. It's for them to explain where that came from. I don't believe that that would have been necessary to secure the upsides of the deal. Upsides there are, but on this question, on the substance of a 12-year straitjacket as opposed to annual negotiations, or indeed securing an SPS agreement which European friends wanted to secure, I'm at a loss to understand why they were prepared to give that away. I just don't understand it.
And Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with Charles Woodburn, the Chief Executive of BAE Systems, which is the largest single manufacturing industrial employer in Glasgow and the wider west of Scotland, who described this deal as a positive step forward for both EU and UK security? And will the Scottish Government work with the UK Government in supporting Scottish defence contractors to bid for the £150 billion worth of export contracts in the Security Action for Europe project?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I think the background for the non-initiates around the agreement is that the European Union has put aside a very, very significant fund to invest in defence, given the scale of the challenge that we face as a continent. And I think it is a good thing that the UK has reached an agreement on the EU, that the UK and the EU will work together, that will give access to that fund, that will include defence contractors in the UK, and those defence contractors may very well be in Scotland too. I think that's a good thing. We need to be contributing to the common security of our continent, given the scale of the threat that faces us. And, of course, the Scottish Government will be working right across all of the areas of this agreement to work out what advantage can be secured, notwithstanding the downside, which I've updated the Chamber on, but defence and security should be a priority for all of us.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement on the Scottish Government response to the outcome of the EU-UK summit on the 19th of May. I'll allow a moment for front benches to organise for the next item of business.